It's the 12th of Elul. When I was considering the backdrop for this particular shir, I couldn't decide whether to use the one that I have finally chosen or to have a picture of a car. Because at the moment, there's a little bit of discussion going on in our wider family about driving and cars. My eldest grandson, who's in yeshiva, um, is considering applying for his provisional license, but may well be premature because you can't really drive a car in the old city of Yerushalayim. But my eldest granddaughter has just received her provisional license. And now, of course, the discussion is, do you drive a manual or an automatic? And what are the advantages of passing on a manual or an automatic? I know that I passed my driving test on a manual car, and for many years drove a manual car. Then I moved on to an automatic, and I haven't even really thought about having a manual car subsequently, although there are, of course, advantages to manual cars. Why am I talking about cars? Rav Shimshon David Pinchas Zeichet Tzadik Livracha compares our work in davening and tefillah to a person driving a manual car. Now, of course, most cars nowadays are automatic, so we literally just start, press the accelerator, we've got the brake, and that's it. But with a manual car, it's, as we know, more complicated. It's harder to drive because you need to actually change gear, you need to move to a higher gear or a low gear as appropriate, depending on your speed, where you're driving, the driving conditions. And as we all know, the higher the gear, the faster the car will be able to travel. Rav Pinchas says that growing into tefillah is like changing into a higher gear. You can spend your whole life in a low gear, feeling that we're making progress. But as with a car, the real progress comes when we're able to actually change gear into a higher gear, and then we can travel at a higher speed. Now, I'm not suggesting, and I know Rav Pinchas was not suggesting with this idea, that we daven faster. That's not the idea. It is actually achieving more in our davening, making more progress, putting effort into developing ourselves in our davening will allow us to progress forward in our life's journey and reach further destinations. Now, the Gemara in Brachot actually teaches us that 4 things require constant effort to improve. They're Torah, Gemilat Chasadim, good deeds, tefillah, and derech eretz. And what I'm focusing on at the moment is this tefillah, this idea of prayer. Because we need to consider our tefillah, we need to consider our prayers and work on them. And that way we will actually develop and improve ourselves. The Gemara also teaches that tefillah stands at the highest point in the world. And Rav Shimshon David Pinchas illustrates this concept with an analogy to a ladder. He wrote, just as we require a ladder to ascend to the roof of a tall building, so too we need to use a ladder to get to the highest point of the world. Unfortunately, many people never lift a leg to the first rung. They dance around the bottom of the ladder and at times glance up to see its top. Attempting to take steps up the ladder would greatly benefit us, with every bit of effort that we put forth bringing us one step closer to that marvelous peak. And that's what we've got to do. That's what we can do with tefillah. Because while we're focusing on our davening, while we spend some time focusing on our davening, thinking about the words, thinking about the meaning, we'll begin to notice that there are some parts of our davening that go very well. And we'll actually develop a new appreciation of our davening. If we actually focus on the words of brachot, if we focus on the words of the Shemona Esrei, if we understand what we're saying and think about those words, then our feeling towards davening should become more positive and inspired. Now, people often say to me, oh, well, why should I be restricted to just use the words of a Siddur? Why can't I just say my own tefillot? And yes, to a certain extent, we can say our own tefillot. We can write our own tefillot. I'm not objecting to that at all. But to a large extent, the formal prayer service as set down by the Hachamim, combined with the age-old text of the Siddur, allows us to get on stage and, as it were, perform. There's terrific power in connecting to Hashem through the words of the tefillah, using the specific words of the prayers that have been written. And it's these words that have been written by our sages that actually they wrote it through divine inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh, and it guides each of us towards meaningful prayer. And it's this combination of understanding and appreciating the words, along with that script that we've got in front of us, and knowing how to behave, what to perform, what to do, when to stand up, when to do certain things in the service. If we follow that script with a proper understanding, we enter into a different mindset in a way that we're conducive to prayer. The Siddur and the halachot surrounding davening are the correct tools that we need to use to connect to Hashem through our prayer. Spend some time over these next few weeks going through some tefillot. Maybe start with the Amida, maybe then move on to Shema, maybe Aleinu, maybe Nishmat. Whatever we choose, work on it. Understand the meaning behind the words. Understand why it is included in the tefillah at that point. What are we trying to achieve? And then our connection with Hashem will advance along with that progress. It's really up to us to put the effort in. If we focus on preparing ourselves for davening, spend a few minutes quietly before we start davening, thinking about what we're going to say, preparing ourselves. There's a recommendation in the Gemara, people used to spend 2 hours preparing before they even said a word of tefillah. We don't have that luxury. We've got so many conveniences that our time is now very pressured. Spend a little bit of time. Pause and think about what we're doing, where we're going, what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to connect with Hashem. And then focus our mindsets during davening on the words we're saying. Understand what we're doing. And hopefully that will transform our attitudes and our approach towards davening and increase our connection with Hashem. Hashem is here waiting for us. It's up to us to make that connection. Have a good day.